Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a pretty intense scenario. It's drawn from homefrontjohn.pdf.
Yeah, intense is the word. We're looking at a post-EMP America under Korean occupation. It's fictional, of course, but feels disturbingly detailed.
Exactly. And we're piecing this together for you from a few different angles, aren't we?
We are. We've got personal journal entries, which give you that ground-level view. Then there are news reports, sort of embedded in the story, and just observations of how everything changes.
Right. So our mission, for you listening, is to sort of map out what happens right after the attack, the immediate chaos, and then how resistance starts to bubble up.
It's a tough scenario, but fascinating to unpack.
Okay, so where does it all kick off? The beginning of the end, so to speak.
It seems to start with these really coordinated subway bombings. 12 major U.S. cities hit simultaneously. The date isn't pinpointed right away, but it's clearly the setup.
A massive terror attack, basically. But that wasn't all.
No, not even close. Right after that, or perhaps concurrently, there's a huge cyber attack. It hits U.S. military systems, government computers, basically decapitates the ability to coordinate a defense.
Makes them blind.
Completely. And then comes the big one, the EMP, January 16th, 2025.
The electromagnetic pulse. Explain that a bit for listeners who might not know.
Sure. So an EMP is this massive burst of energy. It doesn't directly harm people, but it fries unprotected electronics, cars, phones, the power grid, anything complex.
And in this story, it's triggered deliberately.
Yes, by a Korean satellite they apparently placed in orbit over the U.S. specifically for this purpose, just switches off the modern world overnight.
Devastating. And the invasion itself.
Yeah, that falls quickly. January 25th, Korean forces land on the West Coast, L.A., San Francisco, San Diego, and at the same time, paratroopers are dropping into key locations across the country.
Wow. So swift, so coordinated.
Extremely. And in those cities they occupy, it's immediate martial law. The country is just stunned, completely unprepared for anything like it.
Okay, let's get down to the human level. You mentioned journal entries.
Yeah, from a guy named Ben Walker. He's our main viewpoint character for a lot of this. He was living in L.A., working as a celebrity gossip reporter, believe it or not.
Quite the change in perspective, then.
You could say that. The journal entries really highlight the jarring shift. His old cynical world versus this grim reality of, no power, no communication, no working cars, constant shortages, and, an occupying army.
So what does he see right after the EMP hits L.A., January 14th to 16th, you said?
It's pure chaos, but initially it's silence. An eerie quiet as everything just stops working. Then distant fires start popping up, and eventually the screaming begins as the reality sinks in.
Society just breaks down.
Very quickly. He describes stalled cars everywhere, police trying to keep order on horseback like something out of another century, tear gas, looting, breaking out, gas stations torched, and the smell. He mentions the overwhelming stench as sanitation failed.
That detail really paints a picture. It shows how fragile our systems are.
Absolutely, and how fast things can unravel when those systems go offline. There's no fallback for most people.
And there's confusion too, right? Misinformation.
Yeah. The mayor's office, or what's left of it, starts putting out leaflets, but they claim the EMP was a nuclear explosion. With no real news sources, people don't know what to believe, just adds to the panic.
God, imagine that. And the physical destruction from the EMP itself.
It's massive. Walker talks about planes just falling out of the sky around LAX because their electronics failed. One apparently hits the Santa Monica Pier, celebrity mansions in Beverly Hills getting hit too. It's indiscriminate.
So, okay. Why Korea? What's the backstory the sources give us on how they became capable of this?
Well, the narrative sets up that North and South Korea unified back in 2013. They formed this greater Korean republic.
Unified, or...
Well, the text implies it was maybe more of a North Korean takeover framed as unification. But either way, this new republic quickly becomes a major world power, very assertive.
Assertive enough to declare war on Japan.
Exactly. That happens in 2018 in this timeline. It signals their ambition, their willingness to use military force.
And where's America in all this? Why were they so vulnerable?
The sources paint a picture of a weakened U.S. There was apparently a major economic collapse around 2018, 30% unemployment, stock market crash, gas at like $12 a gallon, rationing, reduced military presence globally.
So, ripe for the picking, essentially.
That seems to be the idea.
Yeah.
The Koreans saw an opportunity and had a plan. The transit attacks, the cyber strike, then the EMP knockout blow. Very methodical.
Are there specific Korean figures involved that we learn about?
Yes, a couple are mentioned. Yi Dae-hyun, who apparently helped shape public opinion in the South before the unification, suggests long-term planning.
Okay.
And then there's a really central figure on the ground in the U.S., Salmusa.
Salmusa, what's his role?
He's described as a high-ranking Korean sleeper agent, been living in America, integrated, and the signal for the invasion for execution phase 1 is him killing his own American wife on January 15th.
Chilling. A sleeper agent just waiting for the signal.
Exactly. And he's not just involved in the initial takeover, he's masterminding some truly horrific stuff afterwards.
Not quite.
Operation Water Snake.
Water snake.
Yeah. Starting February 2026, they deliberately contaminate the Mississippi River with radioactive material. 5 different deposit locations. The goal is to create a permanent, deadly barrier right down the middle of the country.
My God. Weaponizing the environment on that scale.
It's terrifying. And Salmusa is also in charge of population control in the occupied zones. Mass arrests, executions.
Who are they targeting?
Anyone they see as a potential leader or dissident. Politicians, academics, bloggers, student leaders. Anyone who might inspire resistance. They set up mass grave sites near major cities. Vegas, Portland, LA, Salt Lake City are mentioned.
And detention centers?
Yes, indefinite detention, no trials. They specifically mention using the California State Prison in Lancaster for political prisoners, these dissidents. It's brutal, systematic suppression.
Is it just brute force or is there propaganda too?
Oh, definitely propaganda. Salmusa uses that too. There's an incident where they stage the execution of a guy named Horace Danziger, then distribute flyers with his supposed last words denouncing resistance, trying to break people's spirit.
But does it work? Does resistance actually start to form?
It does. Despite everything, we get introduced to Captain Hennings and his National Guard unit. They didn't surrender. They're trying to regroup out in the chaos.
That must have been incredibly difficult with no communication.
Hugely difficult. They're relying on scraps, Korean propaganda they don't trust, rumors flying around, word of mouth. There's even a rumor the U.S. government is being held hostage by a nuke in Honolulu. Imagine trying to organize anything in that environment.
Yeah, the fog of war taken to an extreme.
But still, little pockets of resistance start forming. Military remnants, guard units, police, even just ordinary civilians banding together, spontaneously all over.
And Ben Walker, our reporter, gets drawn into this.
He does. He meets Sergeant Kopple, who's with Henning's unit. Kopple kind of takes Walker under his wing, teaches him basic combat, how to survive.
So Walker becomes a fighter.
He has to. There's a detail about Kopple having this persistent cough, though. Ominous. It turns out later he's suffering from radiation poisoning, another hidden danger.
Right, so Walker hooks up with Hennings' main group.
Yeah. In May 2025, he escapes from the 29 Palms Marine Base area and finds them in the Mojave Desert. Their goal is to get to a more secure resistance base in Utah near Bryce Canyon.
Quite a journey. Do they meet anyone else significant along the way?
They do. Hopper Lee. He's a Korean-American engineer, a mechanic, brilliant with tech. He's sympathetic to the resistance.
And he builds something important, right?
Yes. Goliath, a robot. Becomes a serious asset for them. Hopper's got his own backstory, too. Something about race riots in San Francisco before the invasion adds another layer to the whole situation.
So they're heading towards Utah, but they run into resistance in Vegas first.
Right. In August 2025, they find a group led by Sheriff McConley. And these guys are surprisingly well set up. They've got running water, some self-sufficiency, and a ham radio.
Communication. That's huge.
Massive. And they actually receive a message over it, supposedly from the president.
What does it say?
It's fragmented, but acknowledges the crisis, says the government is safe but location secret, mentions allies pledging aid eventually, confirms the Hawaii nuke threat and the detention centers, and basically tells people to just survive.
Wow. A small piece of hope, I guess.
A very small piece, but probably vital for morale. Walker actually stays in Vegas for a bit with a woman named Kelsie Wilcox he meets there. He even starts broadcasting again, using the ham radio as DJ Ben, trying to spread hope.
That couldn't last, though, could it? Vegas seems like a target.
It was. The Koreans bomb the city heavily in January 2026. Walker and Kelsie barely escape with their lives.
So where do they go then?
They fall in with this group called the Ragtags, basically other refugees, and eventually make their way towards Utah, reconnecting with Kopple's cell near Bryce Canyon.
Back on the original path, what's the next move?
They push on to Montrose, Colorado. The goal there is to get an old radio station back online, a proper one, with more range than the ham radio.
For DJ Ben to reach more people.
Exactly. Trying to build that network, connect the pockets of resistance. And it's in Montrose they make a crucial discovery.
All right.
They capture a Korean soldier. And under interrogation, he spills the beans about Operation Water Snake, the plan to poison the Mississippi.
That must have been horrifying to learn, the scale of it.
Absolutely. Changes everything. But they don't have long to process it. Word gets out, a large Korean force is heading for Montrose.
So they have to run again.
Yep. Another narrow escape, this time thanks partly to Hopper's robot, Goliath.
Where to next? This is relentless.
They head east towards Kansas City. They manage to connect with someone called Derby and the Voice of Freedom Network.
The Voice of Freedom sounds like a more organized underground radio.
It seems to be. Linking different cells, sharing information, but of course that makes it a huge target for Salmusa.
He's still hunting them.
Oh, yeah. He tracks down the Voice of Freedom broadcaster in Topeka, Kansas, tortures and executes him, sends a clear message.
But Walker doesn't back down.
No way. He gets on the airwaves himself, defiance blazing, directly challenges the Koreans after the Topeka incident, makes himself an even bigger target.
So it's just constant running and hiding from then on.
Pretty much. Moving between different resistance cells, always looking over their shoulder, Salmusa closing in.
Do they find any temporary safety?
They spend some time with a cell led by a Professor Bendix near St. Peters, Missouri, right by the Mississippi. But Kelsie gets really hesitant about crossing the river.
Because of Water Snake. Does she know?
The text hints she suspects or knows something she really doesn't want to cross. But Walker feels they have to.
How do they even attempt it with the radiation?
Walker and Kopple come up with a desperate plan. They get hold of an Abrams tank. The idea is to use it to cross the new Chain of Rocks bridge.
A tank. Across a probably damaged bridge over a radioactive river.
Extremely dangerous. And the bridge is guarded by drones.
What happens?
Kopple. He makes the ultimate sacrifice. He manages to take out the drones, clearing the way for Walker, but he doesn't make it.
Oh, man. Kopple.
Yeah. And Salmusa is right there, closing in on the bridge, too.
So Salmusa finally gets Walker.
Almost. But there's an irony. Salmusa's own team gets taken out by the intense radiation near the river. The weapon they deployed turns on them.
Wow. So Walker gets away.
He does. He makes a run for the old Chain of Rocks bridge, a much more decrepit structure nearby, sets explosives on it as he crosses.
To stop anyone following.
Exactly. The deep dive essentially ends right there. Walker making it across, the bridge collapsing behind him, safe for the moment, but completely alone and his future totally uncertain.
What a journey. Okay, stepping back from the narrative, what are the big takeaways for you, for the listener?
Well, first, just the sheer speed and effectiveness of the initial attack in this scenario. How quickly modern society can be crippled. Then the brutality of the occupation, the systematic control.
But also the resistance.
Absolutely. How even in the face of that, people find ways to fight back. Decentralized, desperate, but fueled by individuals like Walker finding courage they never knew they had. It's quite remarkable, even in fiction.
So you, the listener, have really gotten this specific, detailed look into one imagined version of collapse and the fight for survival.
It's a fictional lens, but it makes you think.
It really does. And maybe that brings us to a final thought to leave you with. We see this incredible human resilience in the story, right? Against impossible odds.
Yeah, definitely.
So thinking about that resilience, if something this devastating, this overwhelming, were ever to happen, what other kinds of resistance, maybe things we haven't even considered, might emerge? And beyond just the guns and the tech, what are those basic human things? Communication, community, just sheer belief that would be absolutely critical for any kind of resistance to even survive, let alone succeed.
That's the core question, isn't it? What
Yeah.
makes people keep going? It's something worth pondering.